Thanks for having me on, guys. This is awesome. I love gear, love talking all about it. So yeah, this is going to be really fun.
A lot of this equipment we're talking about it can be used for musicians and content creators in general. If you're a YouTuber,
and I've shot probably 90% of my show on this little camera.
I love you guys. Chris, you're just amazing. Jim, so are you. You guys are the best hosts ever, I think.
Just stop, please.
ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Dealcasters Live. My name is Chris Stone. I'm at Castahead at castahead.net. And for those of you wonderful people that are seeing us on all the tubes, if other than Amazon, we're live on multiple different places. But Jim, you know where the party's at. The party's here on Amazon. And that's why this big circle is showing up in the middle of our screen, telling everybody to unmute. And you're like, well, I'm on Facebook. I don't know where the unmute button is. Well, the unmute button is on Amazon. And that's why we're doing that, because all the glorious people on Amazon are here to see our guest today. Jim Fuse, you're not our guest. No. You're our guest every time we're on. But Fuse, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. It's Tuesday, right? It seems like the week's been going much faster because we were on here yesterday with an amazing guest, Lois Kramer. She taught us a lot about how to book more business. Yes. What a great guest she was. Jeff should probably have her on his show as well.
She's awesome.
She's doing some stuff with Clubhouse, right? And but yeah, I'm really excited about our guest today. Jeff Sieh. I mean, it's nice to actually be able to say that this is someone I've become friends with. We've met in person, at a couple conferences in San Diego. He's been on the Tim and Jim show, been on his show, and he is like, to me, I look up to him. He's one of those power people in social media. He's got his manly Pinterest tips. He's probably the manliest guy on Pinterest. I know we're still trying to figure out how to spell Pinterest.
There's nothing I would have loved to do more than to grow a handlebar mustache. Ever since I had a trading card of Raleigh Fingers, the pitcher, the relief pitcher. You remember him?
I do.
Pittsburgh Pirates, San Diego Padres, maybe. I don't know. Ever
Oakland
since
A's?
I had one of those, I was like, one day I can grow a handlebar mustache. I'm not manly enough, Jim. I can't do it. And speaking of not being manly enough, I was not manly enough to mention, if you are on Twitch and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook seeing this, again, the party's on Amazon and we made it easy for you. So all you've got to do is open up your browser if you're on your desktop or on your phone and type in dealcasters.live. It's over there underneath Jim. Jim, do that, please. Yes, thank you. Sometimes we got to point. We got to point to unmute. We got to point to go. So it's dealcasters.live brings you into the party so you can hear everything that Jeff Sieh's got to share with everyone today. So yeah, we're absolutely looking forward to the conversation, right, Jim?
Absolutely. So what do you think? Should we bring him on?
I think that people they're not here to hear us talk. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
So ladies and gentlemen, out of the heart of Texas, an amazing human being. If you want to learn about social media, you need to be following him. I mean, he's worked with Guy Kawasaki, still works with Guy Kawasaki, Kim Garst, and many others. Was a big part of Social Media Examiner's previous live show. But I'm excited to have with us live today on Dealcasters, Jeff Sieh.
Well, thank you so much. This is fun. I love not having to press all the buttons, which is really, really nice.
Exactly.
You just show up, and you guys do a
You're
great
the
job.
Talent today. Lean back.
I tell you, it's not too late for you. Mustache. I'm telling you, you can get one. It's just patience.
Oh, man. Jeff, if I tried, it would just be a patchy. It would be like my lawn looks like all the time here in Georgia. It's just so I give up on it. But fantastic. Obviously, the handlebar, the beard, and You must be 100% more manly than Jim and I combined. But,
no, I just was really lazy and I like to shave. That's pretty much is. It's one of those things you really don't have to do anything. You just don't shave. So yeah.
Well, I
Not
know
much skill.
I had to wait until I was in my 40s before I could grow facial hair because of being in the Marines.
That's
And
right.
I've kind of kept it ever since, but I don't know. I still feel like if I tried to go with the beard, I'd have like the bald spots in here. So I just go with the
Just let
the
it grow
goatee
out.
look.
It just comes. The funny thing is, like when I was on the fire in college, I was a student firefighter where I lived in the firehouses and actually rode the trucks and dispatched and all that stuff and helped pay for college. But you couldn't have, because the Scott's Air Packs, they won't let you have a beard. And so that's why a lot of the firefighters, you'll see you have those little mustaches because that's all they can have. So,
I
a
did
little
not
bit
know
of
that.
trivia.
See, that's the kind of knowledge you get here on Dealcasters Live,
Someday
right?
you may be asked that question, and now you know.
Right. So Jeff, tell us about, how did you end up in social media? I know you've been in it for quite a while. Tell us the Jeff Sieh story, because it probably could be a movie or even a book if it isn't
Yeah,
already.
and Brad Pitt should play me. I think would be a good thing.
Nice.
So no, so the funny thing is, and Jim and I met over here at Google Plus. So that's where it all started for me. Actually, what I did is I had this little like digital agency here in Longview. I did commercials. I got into video when nonlinear editing systems first came out, like Adobe Premiere, which I've been using since it came out. And I started doing the social media thing and started telling my clients they needed to do it. And I'm like, well, I better do it too. Started writing a blog, and I wrote this blog called Mainly Pinterest Tips #1, where it was my daughter and I sharing a secret board. It kind of blew up. And back then in the day, before Facebook and all these other places, Google Plus and Google Hangouts were like the Wild West of live video. I remember I went to South by Southwest with Ronnie Binter, who was this Google Hangouts guy about video. And we interviewed Guy Kawasaki before I knew him with this contraption, like on this pole we duct tape like a cell phone, and we called people back, and it was and it had the speakers that we had hanging off of it. It was this jury rig thing because it was the Wild West of live video. Started doing that. Google Plus went nuts. I started a live show over there in Hangouts called Manly Pinterest Tips because everybody wanted me to do one. That led to me getting a gig at Social Media Examiner, doing their Pinterest, and then they had me speak, and then I've been speaking there ever since. I think I spoke there I was the 5th time I did it, and that's it. I mean, that's how it all started. I could trace it all back to those little circles on Google Plus.
Well, and I can tell you, Chris, one of the most eye-opening things to me, and this was probably, I think it was 2017, when Jeff was speaking, and it's like I learned all this stuff about fonts and colors, and that's like it was like mind-blowing to me because I had just started in social media, and it's like, wow, I'm thinking way too simple, but Jeff, I know that's something I'll never forget. And of course, I think you were also even doing something with Rebecca Radice as well.
Yeah.
And then we've had a chance. It was unfortunate this past year we didn't get to hang out in San Diego, but it's always been fun to get to hang out with you and Eric and some of the other folks that we see. And what was neat, like pre-pandemic, I know you weren't able to make it, but Eric came to Social Media Week Lima,
right,
which is in August this year. And I don't know if you guys are going to be able to make it because I know you guys have a lot on your schedule, but that was a great, got to know you, as I used to say, your other half, Eric, quite a bit better. Another amazing human being. So
I want to go back and how important these relationships are. And, people say, it's social media, whatever. I can trace everything back to the gig I have with Guy Kawasaki right now. I produce his live show and also his podcast, Remarkable People, which goes crazy. I mean, we were on Clubhouse the other day with Jane Goodall, and he's had Martha Stewart on. I mean, it's like I get to listen and edit really interesting conversations and make money doing it. So, but I can trace that all back to a post that I made, commenting on Peg Fitzpatrick's post, and then a friendship developed, and I helped her with stuff. She helped me. She runs all Guy's social. So 5-7 years later, here I am producing his show. But it all came from those relationships that you make on this, these goofy little platforms. But you can really, Jim and I had a little fun debate about Clubhouse because, I kind of poo-poo it. A lot of people like it. And so, I mean, my thing is, it doesn't matter. Google Plus isn't even around anymore, and I built my business off of it, and I'm still reaping the benefits. So it doesn't matter if you're building good relationships.
And I think people forget that the first part of social media is social, right? And a lot of people will take social media and they'll use it to trumpet a bunch of things that's related to their business. Well, you got to be on this, you got to be on this, got to be on this, got to be this. And of course, you can't be and lean into everything. Nobody's got all the time to do that. But I think where you find the platform that you're in, whether it's Pinterest or whether it's Twitter or whether it's Clubhouse, or lean into that and actually be social, it can turn into some really great relationships personally. And like from a business perspective, I'm sure you've gotten a ton of business just because you actually were a social person, believe it or not, on Pinterest, right? Or on, Google Plus or these things that, may have sunset at this point.
Yeah. And it's just I did a lot of stuff for free for a lot of people. When you first get started, you just are making relationships and stuff. And you never ask, you guys, I'm sure since you started doing this show and the success that you've had over there, you probably get pitches every day. Like, I need to be on your show. And here's why. And, you can tell that they haven't even watched your show. They just saw you have some numbers.
That's the classic one.
You just don't do the ask. Most of the times when people ask me on your show, they're not a good fit to be on your show. And so you do things for people and that organically happens. Like, I knew Jim from a long time. I mean, back and forth. And I ask him questions like offline, like, how are you doing this Amazon thing? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, he's an expert. He needs to be on our show. And I mean, all this stuff. And it just happens organically. You can't force it or it feels really, really fake.
Yeah, there's a ton of people that are doing live shows or they're doing a podcast, and that's great. But then there's a lot of people that may be writing a book or they're a keynote speaker or they're doing these things and they're using a podcast or a live stream as their marketing, their free marketing. Like, I'm just going to target a bunch of people or I'm going to hire someone that's just going to scatter shot so that I can show up, talk about everything that I want to talk about on a particular platform. But it's like, when you're on this show, of course, you're the feature, you're the quote unquote star, but you're here to just talk, to serve, to do what you're going to do. It's not like you're going through, okay, here is my list of 32 things that I have to talk about. Buy my stuff and do all of that stuff. And I think that comes across in both ways. If somebody's showing up and doing that other stuff where they're drilling down, guess what? There's 32 podcasts that person did. They all sound alike. And it just doesn't come across and is a good podcast. Doing something that is organic and social, like a lot of what you guys do, is what resonates with people.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you can tell, like, and you've interviewed enough people that this has happened. And this is something that, if you do this, you probably need to work on. And if you don't, this is a skill that you have, is that, like, when you interview somebody like Jim, both of you guys do this, is you can tell when people are just waiting for you to stop talking to bring it back to you. And you've had guests on here who have liked that. You're like, they're just waiting. Okay, let me tell you about my new course, because I've got this really course and all you have to do is go here, here, and here. And it just seems like, I call them used car salesmen, like guests, and if you get lucky enough and you've been blessed enough that people are asking you to come provide value for an online summit, for a podcast episode, for a live video, if you are doing the interviewing, you always make the guests the feature, like you guys have done here. When I had Jim on my show, I wasn't talking about everything that I did. I was like, Jim, so how do you feel about this? And why do you do this that way? They are the focus of the attention, like you guys do. And if you can learn that, then you are going to be super valuable to be on other shows, because people really want that kind of conversation and relationship.
Yeah. And your show won't be boring, right? Because it'll be the same thing every time. It's like, that's fantastic. That's great advice, I think, for podcasters, for live streamers, for content creators. Just, be real in that situation. And, if you want to market yourself, just make yourself searchable. Right. And then when you show up in places like this, don't be spilling the same sales information you did on 48 prior podcasts. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, Chris, watching Jeff, whether it was when he was on Social Media Examiner's show with Eric or just even with his new show, that's one thing I always admire about Jeff is he's, he practices what he preaches, right? He's always helping everyone learn, get better. I mean, even when I saw him speak in person, right? It wasn't like he was like, hey, if you want to become part of my course, do this or that. It's like, hey guys, here's some free stuff to make you smarter. I've never felt like Jeff is a salesy guy. And I think, and like you said, we've done a lot of behind the scenes communication. They used to, they were struggling for a while to get on LinkedIn Live. And, I was humbled that he was
Right.
reaching out to me because I was like, I got kind of lucky how I got on LinkedIn Live. And we know there's still a ton of people out there like, how do I get on LinkedIn Live? It's, I don't know. That's a good
Yeah,
question.
it's a crapshoot. It's
Yeah. Do we want to now? I don't know.
I've really enjoyed the engagement that I have had because so us as you guys have, this is like Amazon Live. If you're watching somewhere else, you need to come to Amazon Live because that's the focus of this. Ours is just like going news and going everywhere, and Amazon is a destination, which has been great because we're making money over there. But LinkedIn Live has a great community, and I've had some really good success of building that up because I don't know, just people are talking, and it's still, it just feels more than Facebook is sometimes, I guess.
Oh, I would
maybe it's the
definitely
right
do
show.
that.
It's the right show on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I think
you're probably right. It's probably a good,
there.
yeah, because it's about news and social media and stuff. So you're probably right about that, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jeff, what really got you started, I guess, in live streaming? Because even like, and I know we talked about this the other day that maybe you're going to bring it back this summer, but like, you've even had some fun stuff where like you were doing wood carving,
Right.
and while you're wood carving these projects, right? Like Chris, he literally does this over like a series of shows, and he has a conversation with the audience. It's really a lot of fun. So who knows? Wood carving could be coming to Amazon Live.
I thought about doing it because that would make sense over at Amazon because people are always asking me where they get the knives and the tools and all that stuff. And I was doing it on Twitch. I originally started that just because I saw Mark Schaefer do some painting, and I thought that's really good. It was right when COVID started and everyone was locked down. Everyone's kind of freaking out. And I just did it mainly like I went live every day for like 2 or 3 weeks and just sit there and just talked. I had a topic like, what's your favorite movie and whatever. And I just carved and showed them the processes. And people thought it was like that ASMR, where the people, hey, hello, like I was like the wood carving bearded Bob Ross is what it turned out to be. And they really liked it. And that's the one thing. And I don't know why I haven't done it. It's time, you know how that is. But it was, everybody has asked more about that than anything else. So it's really crazy.
Very cool. Very cool. And I know we've got some people joining in the chat, and Gina Capone over on Amazon says, yes, the exact same thing happened to me. I ran to chat rooms from 2001 to 2010 and a healthcare blogger from 2005 to 2008. And that's how I became a healthcare speaker and a community manager for .orgs as well. I feel like Jeff's story is mine. So thanks, Gina Capone, for chiming in. That's great. And I think the other great thing I think about Amazon, speaking of, is just like how massive you're casting a net, right? And so, of course, it's not as lean in as some of these other platforms are, but when you do kind of poke in, and I know your show is more like, hey, this works here. But when you do poke in on Amazon and you've taken, all the great information that Jim shared with you on your show and whatnot, what have you learned from your experience on Amazon? What have you sort of taken away?
Well, it reminds me of the Wild West of Hangouts on Google Plus. It really does. But I think that, the views that you get and even the time watched are really higher compared to some of the other platforms. If you look at kind of the analytics, and I love the analytics they give you. It's still kind of clunky. It's like Periscope where you have to start it here and then hit your phone and then that kind of stuff. They'll get better. And I really wish I could bring comments on screen. That's one of the other things because everybody likes to see their face. And I think if they could do that on Amazon Live, oh my gosh, because people would love to see that. I feel like Amazon's more of the public arena of it's like you're at the mall, like when they used to, you go and have your choir and you stand and sing at the mall, your mom would have to come, and it's like that. You're there and you're in front of all these people walking by at the mall, and depending on how well, like you have and I actually used some of your ideas when I was even crafting my own lower thirds and stuff for my show, is because you're wanting to catch the eye. with somebody walking by the mall, it's like window shopping. What are they? Oh, Dealcasters, unmute. What? And doing that. I mean, that's really catchy. And I think, so I took some of that stuff. And if you look at my show, I've got this moving background. And I also went to like CNN and all that stuff. And I actually did a screenshot and then built my graphics by, putting them in Photoshop and building them exactly the same way, the same dimensions and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff you can learn from that. But Amazon Live, I think it's like the mall. You're there. People stop. The people who really want to learn more, then they go in the store, or they put it, anything you see down below here, make sure you add it to your cart. You may not want to get it now, but let's go ahead and add it, that kind of a thing, because, it's good for us. But I mean, I just think it's, there seems to be less friction. Like shoppers are already on Amazon, right? And those people we've talked about this before, are primed to buy. And so I've really enjoyed too. It's kind of been a bonus for me as I get like we had Holly Homer on our show, who did Quirky Mama's 1 million plus Facebook group. She has like 5 books. I put all her books underneath there, so people could buy her books right from where I was doing it. I did the same with Mark Schaefer. I had Lou Mangello, one of my favorite guys who does Walt Disney World Radio, on the show. He has like 5 books, and I could put his audio, tours, everything on there. And that makes them feel good. If you can tell your guests like, hey, I'm selling your stuff underneath my show, this is really, and I mean, Holly's reached out like, how do I do this? How do I get on Amazon Live? Yeah. So it's really, really, it's good as you as a host to offer that to your guests, especially if they're an author.
I really love, and you touched on this, your show, and I just, and for those that are watching right now, this right here is how the show looks. And you spoke. Let me pull this down. You spoke about the whole CNN vibe and the whole news vibe. I think that's what struck me first and foremost when I jumped on this stream. Is like, this looks like as good, or better in some cases, any sort of news show. And, there's a lot that I know went into this. You said, oh, I copied sort of, a CNN vibe, and you did that. But I mean, you're obviously, skilled in video editing and graphic editing as well. But you use a couple of different things as far as, putting this stuff together. I'd be interested to find out, and I know the viewers would be interested as well. I know Ecamm here has got to be in the mix,
right?
And we're free to talk about software on Amazon. We don't have anything to do that. So, look, we can win some stuff. We don't want to put that up there in case someone wants to.
The contest is over.
Yeah, so right, exactly. That's way over. But if you notice that blue background, and I seriously, from your stuff, Chris, is when I looked at the Dealcaster stuff, it's like, man, that really pops. And first of all, it kind of looks like showy. You're like, but you're trying to catch those people walking by at the mall, and you're trying, it's the same thing on Facebook. I'm trying to get people to stop the scroll. So things that I would do different for like a webinar is I would do a different background than what I'm using there. That blue background that was going, that is totally designed for them to catch the eye. I've also broken all of our shows, and Grace Duffy, my co-host, she's been on it, and she came with me from Social Media Examiner. She's always been the producer behind the scenes, and we break down the show, and we kind of streamlined it to 3 segments that we have. All those segments are programmed into my Stream Deck, so I can bring up like the opening title that comes up, and then I can bring up the segment. And like, can we talk about the Stream Deck right now? I mean, absolutely. So what I've done is I've kind of laid it out in a way where all my so I have different camera shots. Like I have that 3-up that you saw there with Ramon that we had at the beginning. I have like a kind of a group shot where it's like you're doing right now. I'm highlighted and we're off smaller. And then I have full screen of the guests. And I have all those laid out at the top of my Stream Deck. And I have the Stream Deck XL, which is the one that has the biggest. Yeah, exactly. Just like that. And I have all of them laid off across the top. Well, right below each of my guests, I have their title, so I can bring up their lower third. So like, I already have this still programmed. I'm not Jim Fuse, but I still have Jim Fuse programmed on my Stream Deck that I can just do there right underneath where I can toggle his camera. And then I have the same thing for Gray. So I have them laid out in grids, in the same way with all my calls to actions and also all of my titles and whatnot that I'm bringing up. Like when Jim was on, our title for the show was getting started on Amazon Live. And so I just had that going. And then when we went to the next segment, it was setting up. How do we set it up? And so I could just easily toggle that.
Right.
And then, and then why should you go live? So we had those 3 segments that I have programmed into the Stream Deck. And so it's really simple if you set them up to do. And I love the Stream Deck for switching cameras and doing all that kind of stuff, doing lives. I mean, it's overwhelming if you think about it. And I've been doing this, like I said, through the Google Plus days. You don't need to do all that fancy smanchy stuff when you first start going live. But just like Chris does at the beginning, where he has the unmute thing, all that stuff, you can add those things as you start getting more comfortable. And the cool thing about live video is, like, if you mess up, it's not that big a deal. No one has ever went, I'm not watching your show anymore because you had the wrong lower third up. Because I'm all the time, I'll put, like, Jim was up the other day and I may have had Grace's thing up. And I'm like, sorry, it just happens. But nobody's ever left my show because of that.
Yeah. So Gina's got a question, Jeff, and she's like that she's always been more of like behind the as you said, computer screen type of person, wants to get started with, I guess, being on camera, but she's nervous. Do you have any tips on how to make that transition?
Yeah. So I get nervous every time I go live. I got nervous before I went on this show. It's just use that to kind of spur you on to go on. So the other thing you do is practice. I practiced before I really, like, when I even did this new show layout that Chris showed at the beginning. I practice with that. I practice my camera switches. But you can also go live. What I've done is I create a private Facebook group that only I have access to, and I stream to that. So I pretend it's like a real stream. I've even had I have friends come on so I can see how I can bring on guests and how I will use those different layouts. Like in StreamYard, you have the different ones you can bring up. I played with that till I was comfortable, and you can do that live in a private group. So that's what I would do. And then the other thing is have a run of show, which means like I showed you at the beginning, I had like the opening title, I had segment 1, segment 2, segment 3. Think of those. Don't just go live and think, I'm just going to answer questions from the audience, because when you do that, you'll get there. There won't be an audience and you won't have anybody. You'll be like, okay, I'm waiting for people to come in. And that just doesn't look good. So I have a habit, and I've done this for every show, and everything that I do is when I go live, I have 10 questions. I may not use them. And if the cool thing is, if like an audience member asks something similar, I'll use their question instead of mine, because I want to bring them up on screen. I want to highlight them. And so that's what I would do. And then if you like, you're still struggling, I was a magician for a while in college too. So have plants in your audience. There's nothing wrong with asking your friends to show up to your live and go, hey, can you ask this question? I did that all the time when I first started.
A lot of it's getting the reps in, which you touched on. It's like, and sometimes like when I first started doing it, I wouldn't go live. I would record myself. And of course, you're your own worst critic. And eventually you got to hit that big red button and go live. But the great news is the first show you do live, hardly anybody's watching. So, it's,
maybe.
Like you said, no one's going to remember it. And the second one's going to be better. The third one's going to be better than that. Man, great advice. This is amazing.
The other thing I want to tell funny. So I remember my first big guest. I got Guy Kawasaki to come on the show. And if you don't know who he was, was the chief evangelist for when Steve Jobs was at Apple. He was like selling the Mac. I mean, he's a big guy in the tech space and founders and all this stuff. So I cashed in all my chips. I had Peg ask if he'd be on my show. I got him on the show. We're getting ready to go live. We're in the green room. It's like 3, 2, 1. And I have a water bottle like this. It's a plastic one. And I turned and I hit the bottom of this thing, and it cracked and it just dropped out. And all of a sudden, whoosh, my whole crotch is soaking wet. And we're live with Guy Kawasaki. Hello, everybody. I had this really nice surprise look on my face. It was probably some false,
false excitement.
Yes. But the thing is, so you're sitting there at the wet undies for the entire show. But the thing is you just things will go wrong. Your internet will go down. Your guest won't show up. You try to plan for as much as you can, but just know things are going to happen and you're going to mess up. There's some days I stumble over words. I say the wrong, it's just going to happen. And you're just going to have to go. So I hope that helped.
Well, and do you feel like, Jeff, I think that because there's been so much live video, I feel like people are more forgiving. And I think even sometimes, the folks on it, we'll just say on some of the other tubes, are so worried about making a perfect video to upload it. It's like, just,
Yeah,
just
you
do
can
it.
edit in
And
post. Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just think it's kind of funny that it's gotten away. I mean, because, we don't even know what we're going to say 5 minutes from now, but we know it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Well, and a lot, I mean, there is that kind of, you want to be professional, of course. I mean, Jim's not saying not to be professional, and you want to make the best show possible. You plan for the best you can. You think of like, okay, if my guest doesn't show up, what am I going to do? What happens if they drop out? You need to have a plan for, like, because I've had that happen. Like all of a sudden the guest freezes and you are on stage, and what are you going to do? You're going to cancel the show? Or are you going to talk a while trying to get them back? So you have to make those kind of plans, but your audience, I've never had somebody this is stupid, I'm leaving. They've never done that. And I've done thousands of hours of live streaming.
Right. And it's kind of come full circle because Phil Hill has joined us on Amazon Live. And we had Phil on last week. And so this completely, correlates to this. And so we had our little, get together at the front end, getting ready to go live. And we noticed there was some sound issues. We were trying to solve those sound issues before we go live. And so we kind of kept kicking the can down the road to, because like you said, it's like, are people really waiting for you to go live? You can kind of wait and go later and get everything solved so that sounds right. But even though we thought we had it right, when we actually did go live, those sound issues were there and they were actually a little worse. And so we were live. And so we're live here on Amazon, tens of thousands of, the car buying public is here to hear these sound issues. And Jim and I didn't freak out. Phil, to his credit, he didn't freak out. And we just kind of were like, you know what, there's some sound issues going on. We're going to pop you backstage. Let's make sure, just give us a high sign, make sure that everything's cool. Jim and I just kind of went on, we brought him back on, still some sound issues, but we just went.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, 10 minutes in, they just solved themselves and everything was fine. But I know some people, Jeff, would probably like freak out and wet themselves. It wouldn't be actual water.
Right.
Wetting, and then hit stop and just like go cry and cower in the corner.
Right.
And it works against you in that situation. If we didn't hit red and go live, we wouldn't have learned something. And I felt like a great interview with Phil Hill.
Absolutely.
And the lady who had the question before about nervous going live at first, it is a lot easier. And that's why I did it. When I first started the Manly Pinterest Tip show, I had 4 other guys and we pretty much ask one question and we go down the line and the show was over. I mean, it was really easy. So it's always easier if you do have a partner you could go live with, because you can, I call them like Periscope videos, when it's just you talking and you're like, hey, you're trying to figure out. It's a lot easier if you have somebody else, a guest that you can interview, or you have like what Chris and Jim have done and what I do with Grace on my show, have somebody there that you can bounce things off if things don't go right. I mean, Grace and I are always talking. We have the notes up, a Google Doc, and we'll be like, hey, he already answered this question, let's skip it. And so we're talking amidst, and that's a skill that you'll develop as you do more and more. But there's stuff that happens behind the scenes, and it's easy. Like if I'm like, I need a drink of water, I can leave her on, full screen while I'm getting something. Or if I'm trying to diagnose a problem, like why does this guest have an echo or something like that? Having another person's really helpful to have that kind of buffer.
I think that's a great point. In fact, because I started my live streaming with Tim Sohn, and I think that was the whole thing. If I didn't have Tim as my co-host, I don't know that I would have stuck to it. Right. I think even it's that whole, like, it's an accountability partner, like, okay, we're going live every week, and so it's like that pressure's on. You don't want to be the one that says, oh, I don't want to go live this week. You do it without me.
Right.
And so I think, that's something, Gina, that you might want to consider. Is there someone that you get along with that maybe you could start a show together? I definitely think that helps. I mean, what's funny is when I got approved for Amazon Live, I think, Chris was the first person I talked to when I was like, hey, Chris, I just got approved for Amazon Live. You want to do a show with me? And we thought of the show name and everything, because it's like, I watched, and you've watched them as well, Jeff, some of what these other people do. And it's like, I'm not going to be this guy that's going to sit there by myself and say, hey, this is the stand of
Right.
the Samsung Q2U. This is great. What do you think,
Yeah,
Jim?
never
Well,
never try to sell that one, Jim. That comes
Yeah.
with the mic.
Yeah.
yeah.
Not a
But
good salesman right there. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Jeff, let's talk a little bit about social media news live, if we could. And those
Mhm.
that are watching on Amazon, or maybe they're listening to a podcast later when we repurpose it. I think what you guys do from a run of show perspective, and you've touched on it, how you and Grace sort of work together really well as a team. But you start the show, and then there's a kind of a pre-show sort of conversation, and then you fire up the podcast machine
Right.
as well. And so for those that are on Amazon right now and they're watching and they're listening to us, and you don't know that there are podcasts available to you on Amazon, all you got to do is download an Amazon Music app for free and download Social Media News Live. Here it is on Amazon Live. With the manly bearded one, Jeff Sieh, on the cover. Why is Grace not on the cover? By the
I know
way,
we need
Jeff?
it. So when we first started, it was still up in the air if she's going to be able to join me or not. And so luckily, we need to redo a lot of different artwork. So you know how it is; it's all a work in progress.
Right? Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And look at this latest episode is with some guy named Jim Fuse.
I know.
Talking about Amazon Live. How amazing is that? So
And that was a good show. That was a really good show.
but you've had really some, and this is a testament to how not just the people but how connected you are, and these are incredible amounts of information, like how to maximize Facebook, but specific Facebook stuff from experts that's current, TikTok, right here, the Rachel Peterson show, and of course Mark Schaefer, who's a legend as well, and YouTube Shorts with Rob Balasabas, who's with TubeBuddy. This is a fantastic podcast, and so for those of you who are on Amazon, didn't know that this existed for free, be sure, of course, you can listen to Dealcasters later, but go listen to Social Media News Live. So Jeff, when you guys are doing your run of show and you're doing that, are you just basically, okay, this is where we're going to start basically the recording of what becomes this audio podcast? Is that how that's going?
Yeah. So, and I've debated on how to, and Grace and I are always kind of refining the beginning of the show, because we started really when you look at our earlier episodes, we had kind of a long lead in before we got to what I call the kind of the meat. I like to have that, like, hey, welcome to, because usually I'm laughing with like Jim behind stage, and it's hard to have like a clean break when you go live. You're still laughing about something somebody said or somebody didn't like, are we live? That kind of thing. And also I like to talk to my audience. Then I like to like, hey, because as you do this more and more, the same people will show up every time. Well, those are your super fans. And I really want to call those people out. Like, hey, Sally Howe, you come watch everything. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. We'd love for you guys to share this out among the socials, blah, 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 blah. Call in anybody who wants to know about this kind of stuff. I like to do that. And then kind of, because somebody may have a really good question that I want to have. And it also lets the live kind of kick off, because it doesn't, unless people have signed up beforehand, other people, they're discovering in their feed. And I like to have a little bit of time. It's not long. And and then we go into like, hey, I'm going to start the podcast machine. That gives me a clean break for when I repurpose it for YouTube, and when I also repurpose it for my podcast. But I also go back and I edit that pre-show stuff out on Facebook and LinkedIn. And that gives me a hard break to do that in. So If people watch the replay, boom, here we're starting the show. And so that's kind of why I do that. And the same thing at the end. I'm like, usually there's some questions that I haven't got to, but I want to make sure that the guests have time to leave if they need to, but we'll cut it off and say, hey, Jim, this was great. That was so funny. You said that, blah, 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 blah. And, and I'll bring in some more questions. Sometimes we'll go, hey, we're going live to Clubhouse. You guys want to continue this conversation? Or, just some fun stuff at the end. Like when we had Lou Mangello, I did a Disney trivia thing where I bought a t-shirt of his and gave it away and that kind of stuff. So we kind of do that kind of fun stuff at the end. But that's kind of what and then we may change it. I mean, the show format will probably stay the same, but that we may trim or move or try different contests or whatever. But that's kind of what we're doing now.
That's great. And that's one of the great things about podcasting. And and a lot of times in live streaming, I know there are some rules, but generally there isn't rules. You can kind of like
Right.
let your viewers, let your super fans, as you say, kind of dictate the way you should kind of flow. I mean, you got to stay true to what you
Right.
feel is your thing and your show. But that's the cool thing, is you don't have to go, oh, well, we have to take a break here because this company said I have to do this, that, or the other. It's like, you don't have to do anything. You could do, that kind of stuff and buy a shirt and go live on Clubhouse and do all that fun stuff, experiment, see what works and see what sticks. If it doesn't stick, all right, cool. We shot our shot, and now we'll move on to something else. That's
right.
great.
That's right. So, I mean, the show flow, getting that down to where you're comfortable, I think is something that's pretty important. And so, and Jim knows this from being on the show. So we have questions that we give to the guests before the show, but I will go ahead and like, oh, you said something there I really want to focus on, and we'll go back, and then and we have certain section, and it's usually after each segment is I have a time where I go back to the audience and like pull those questions. Or if I see a question that I already had in the document that I was going to ask, that somebody asked that was similar, like, what are the levels on Amazon Live? Well, I was going to ask that anyway of Jim, but I would rather pull up, my super fans comment, get them on the screen and make it like they were going to, that I'm listening to them than something else. So that's what I really like to do. So it is a skill, and it takes time because you're bouncing between a document to the comments to you like running the show. It's a lot when you first get started. So that's why it's great, like we've talked about before, is having a guest or a co-host that you can count on and that kind of thing. So it'd be really hard to do all that by yourself.
I agree, 100%. Yeah. Now, Jeff, what really drove you to start Social Media News Live? Because I'm sure you had other opportunities that you could have gone with, but what made you think of this format?
Well, Grace, so one of the shows that we did before for the company that shall not be named, no, we've already talked about, but we were doing shows over there, and like one of our Instagram episodes had like 15,000 views on YouTube, and we had like 2,000. I mean, I remember looking at because the Stream Deck actually has how many viewers you can program to show how many people are watching you. And I'm like, we have 500 people watching the show right now live. And I'm like, okay. And I knew Grace and I worked well together. And when Mike wanted to take over the show, and I'm like, I still want to do the show the way we did it. And we had some limitations we couldn't do. I couldn't ask certain people, and I like to ask people who interest me. Like, right. I want Jim on the show because he helped me with stuff, and this is valuable information. And I know Jim, knows his stuff. I want to have him on the show. I can ask who I want. So I'm in control. So that was a big thing. And I knew there was already an audience for it. I knew that it is a struggle starting from zero after you've had so many people watching you live on one channel, going and starting from nothing. It's really tough, and it's a big blow to your ego when there's 5 people like, oh, hey, everybody. But long term, I thought it would be a great thing, and we could do some really cool stuff. I could do a podcast, build up a YouTube channel, that kind of stuff. And so I already knew it. And I also do a live show with Tailwind, which is kind of that Pinterest stuff we talked about before. And like we have 200 to 300 people watching live on that one. And so I know that I can do a show. So I'm like, this makes sense for me to do. So that's kind of why we did that. And it's in my industry, and I love talking to these people like Mark Schaefer and Jim. And, it's fun.
I think that's important if you love doing it. And that's, Jim and I say this all the time. Like, if we didn't like doing this, we wouldn't do it. I mean, right. Even if there were, if there was if there was more money than whatever we're making now, it's just sort of like, if it isn't fun, don't do it. Right. And the thing I love about your show, your and Grace's show, Jeff, is like, I think so many times we've watched shows and the content is like, oh man, this is so great, but I wish the camera wasn't pointed up their nose and there's a thumbprint on it, or the lighting, it's just kind of bugging me that like there's a clicky sound happening, or, but the content's just so awesome. You can kind of ignore that, but my squirrel brain just can't,
it's hard. Yeah.
But then there's these shows where it's like, it's just glamorous, like fantastic mirrorless stuff, flashing and transitions and all the stuff. And if you close your eyes and listen, it's like, what are they even talking about.
Right.
And so the great thing I like about your show is it has that fantastic balance of like nothing's distracting you from what you guys are talking about. And that is like so many people miss that. And you want to have that professional slick look, and you want to have those pattern interrupts, and you want to go, all of that stuff, but not for the, at the sake or at the risk of losing what you're trying to say. And what you guys are talking about is just fantastic. The guests that you guys are having, just fantastic. And the show is really pro. So those that are watching right now or listening on Amazon, please go to Social Media News Live and check out this show. It's kind of the best of both of those worlds. So congrats and kudos.
Well, I think it's fun too. Is like I mentioned before, is I interview people who interest me, like who I've seen. I'm like, I've always wanted to talk to, like, and to be honest, I would rather have Jim Fuse on and Chris Stone than I would Gary Vanderchuck. I mean, Gary would probably bring in some numbers, but I would rather talk to somebody. I'm like, now, what did you say? And not be worried about like, him just taking over. I mean, I want to ask questions that my audience I know is wanting to ask. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's not always about the big names, because I've had some of the big names and on some other shows, and it's like pulling teeth to get them to answer questions, or they'll not answer your question. You're like, what do I do now? I just asked like pretty, and they just danced. So, but I mean, to be honest, I mean, and I think that comes across to your audience. It's like, if you are asking those great questions, and that's the other thing, is learn how to ask great questions. Like watch, like Jimmy Fallon, I love the old, Johnny Carson. He's the amazing entertainer in the way he asks questions. I know he's old school, but oh my gosh, he knew how to interview people and be entertaining. And so how do you get that into your show? So.
Well, and I think you hit on it. Yeah, I think you hit on it, Jeff, right? It's more about draw out the expertise from your guest as opposed to trying to be the smartest person on the screen. And I think that I think it's a skill that can be developed. I think it goes back to, you've got to watch your show. It's like, oh, am I being too talkative? Am I over talking my guest, or am I letting my guest talk? But I also like your point too, is like, as much as you may say, oh, I could get this really big name, does it make sense? Or are they going to take over the show? And it's like, was it really that great of a show? Especially if they're everywhere already. I think there's a lot of hidden talent out there. Which, and Jeff, something that you do, and that I guess a lot of people don't think about, is you repurpose your show, and you do a lot of this yourself. Talk about how do you do that? What are maybe some of the tools that you like to use?
Yeah, so this quarter, I'm really trying to build up my YouTube channel, and I've had some other channels, but the Social Media News Live channel specifically, and we've only got like 3 or 4. I mean, all the lives go live there, but I'm trying to take those and make them like YouTube videos, like where you have a hook and then like a clip. So everything for me starts with a transcript. So I love to script. I mean, that's what we use for Guy's show, that we use for Kim's. And so I upload that as soon as we're done with the show. That gives me that transcript. That also gives me a way that I can go inside of the script and highlight things and make a clip of that. And so once I have made a clip of all those, like, I think would make good sound bites, like usually a question and an answer. Like from last week, there's some great where I asked Jim a question and he answered it. And it's like 2 to 3 minutes, which is perfect for social media. So I can actually go and take that and make it a video, and I plug it in. Another thing, I looked at you guys, how you repurposing with on Facebook, the square video with your kind of marketing look. And I, kind of copied that and used it for some of my stuff. So that's what I love to script. I also use the script to take out that beginning part. Like I said, when I'm starting the podcast machine, and the ending part, I use the script to export my audio from my podcast. So I use it for that. And then some of the tools, like, we talked about the Stream Deck, but I've just started, it's probably been the last 2 or 3 weeks, is using the Loop Deck right here, this Loop Deck CT for editing for my podcast and for So guys, if you see that down below, you need to check it out because it's amazing. I love it. It's my favorite tool.
Take my money. My money.
So it's got the scroll wheel. So you can use this for video editing. All these buttons are dynamic and change. I don't know why it's not working. Let me see if I can get it to come on. There it is. But so there's the mouse. But when I go into like Adobe Premiere, it will actually start changing all these buttons, and I can swipe across stuff, and all these things are knobs that I can actually adjust. Like, okay, so we just went into, what am I focusing here? So if I click on this editing button right here, it's going to switch everything. And now I have a scroll wheel. You see the pause, the play, and then I can actually swipe across that and it'll change, and I can like do a jog. I mean, all sorts of cool stuff. All these are like, I can swipe across these and change these. I can swipe across the top of here and actually change what these knobs do, which is really cool. Like if you're scaling video, or if you're nudging clips, or all sorts of stuff that you have to do a lot with your mouse and keyboard, it makes it faster and a lot more fun. So I love it. That's my biggest new tool that I love for editing and repurposing. The thing that I've used that's probably changed my show for the better, other than the Stream Deck, is, like I told you, we had show notes that we did. Like when Jim came on, we have his like bio and the questions and those kind of things. And I didn't like it because I'm looking at my camera right here. And when I get to the time where I introduce Jim, I'd go, and then Jim Fuse, he's an amazing guy. He does Amazon Live, and my eyes were not tracking. So the best thing I've done is gotten the teleprompter, that it's the Padcaster, and I stick my phone underneath there. And so I use a piece of software called Teleprompter Premium that allows me, I have all my questions, I have all my segments in there. And so when I'm asking questions, I don't look down at my document. I'm looking inside of my Padcaster, and I can read, Jim's bio. I can ask the next question. And so I actually have, it's really cool. The Teleprompter Premium software lets you connect with your phone or your iPad. So I have it on my desktop, and I also have my iPad because my phone's in there that I have to use for the teleprompter. And that has changed. Chris, you were talking about how the professional look of the thing, being able not to look down when I'm talking or asking questions is a huge deal. And that's probably the thing that changed my show for the better the most.
It's funny you say that too, because Chris and I joked about this a few weeks ago. Because in case you don't know, folks, you can actually watch Amazon Live on your TV set through the Amazon shopping app on the Fire Stick, and I think probably the Fire TV. So I because my wife, maybe your guys' wives do, doesn't always watch my show, and so she was watching this show, and she was like, "I can't watch your show." I'm like, "Why?" Well, you keep looking down. Well, it's because I was looking at the Amazon app on the phone.
Right.
And so to your point, right, I now have this iPad that's elevated so I can just glance and change things. And I'm getting the teleprompter as well, because it is, right? It's frustrating because there's things you want to make sure you don't forget, and you don't want your eyes all over the place. But that just comes with time. And so it's interesting to hear, Jeff, that even as seasoned as you are, right, you're still finding things that you feel that you can improve at.
Yeah, and I used to have my notes, like I make them really small and close to the camera as possible, but there's still this thing, and it also makes it really easy when I repurpose these videos. I usually I'm recording my own hook for those, and so I can have that, and I'd be like, hey, Jim Fuse was on the show yesterday, and I can do my hook and record it and do it really quickly with that. The only thing is the first time I had it all set up, I'm ready to go, and I'm like, oh crap, my phone's in there. I've got to start Amazon Live. So luckily I had it on my iPad, and I was like, oh, okay, there I go. It started a little bit late, but I was like, oh, you have that moment of like, oh crap, how do I do that now? So yeah.
It wasn't as bad as water being spilled into your lap.
But
I think it's not just for content creators though. I think everything is, there's so much virtual stuff going on. Job interviews, sales, virtual presentations for your business as an entrepreneur or whatever. Eye contact is key. If they're not connecting with you, and you have trouble, trying to look at yourself, because myself is right over here. And if I were talking like this the entire time, nobody's really going to connect with me. So I have to get used to not looking at my own face, right? Or having a like you have
Right.
invest in a teleprompter, and then you get used to it, and you knock it out.
And so habit now, like you're still like all this stuff is down below me, but habit I've just got made that I look at my camera. For years, I had a yellow sticky note that had an arrow that pointed to the camera because would always forget. And so now it's just kind of second nature. When I start talking, I'm just ignoring the stuff below me where you guys are and talking to the camera. But I've tried like 3 different teleprompters, and I tell you, the Padcaster is the best by far. I have a Canon M50, which is what I use to stream with, and it actually has these mounts that go right on the front of your camera, and you just slide the Padcaster right on top of it, and so it's amazing. So I love that. I mean, I've tried like 3 of them. Like I even have a big iPad one that mounts on my big camera and all that stuff, but it's the best. So I love it. But you don't have to do all this at the beginning. Like, you look back at the first stuff I didn't have a background. I was using my iMac camera. I had probably the mic that was on my iMac, and I eventually got a Yeti. And then 2 years ago, Heil sent me the PR40, which is what you're hearing right now.
Great mic,
and
yeah.
so I love the PR40. It's a great, amazing mic. And so Guy Kawasaki actually bought that after he bought. So I use that, and I use the Rodecaster Pro because I like to do all the, the sound effects and all that kind of stuff and do all the cool stuff. And it also does a backup recording, and it goes, my mic works with that. Well, Guy bought 2 of those, one for upstairs and one for downstairs, because he likes to sit and I actually am able to plug in my phone into the back of the Rodecaster and use my good mic when I do Clubhouse. And so Guy saw that, and he wanted to have a different setup for his Clubhouse studio versus his. I'm like, okay, third world problems there, I guess. So, gosh.
Yeah.
But
have you ever tried with the Rodecaster having a guest dial in?
It's kind of this,
dial. That's not even a thing. Sorry.
Yeah. Like I used dial tone on my kids the other day. Like, what are you talking about? Right. But I haven't done it because, I mean, you could, and there are some services that do that. I'm always like hesitant to do those dial-in shows because, Joel Comm, and I think he's kind of a social guy. He was bringing people onto his live show, and there's a guy who came on who was just drunk as all get out. And I'm like, why did you do that, Joel? Joel just rolled with it. I could never do that. And it would freak me out getting somebody on live. So I don't do the dial-in. You can do that with it, and with the Bluetooth. Some other podcasters do it, and they're fine, but that's another thing that's changed a lot. It's just you plug it in and you set it and forget it, and it's amazing.
Right. Awesome.
So
yeah, I just, the Rodecaster Pro is something that it's an all-in-one kind of solution for podcasting. And a lot of people, and probably you as well, use it, use every ounce and aspect of it. But I found sometimes you don't need necessarily to buy, what is it, $600, $700?
Yeah, that's pretty pricey.
Yeah. If you just need maybe an interface and a couple of inputs, and
that's what I had for years.
Then maybe I think a lot of people think, I'm a podcaster, I got to get a Rodecaster Pro. I've kind of talked to some people, is your budget like that? Okay. Right. Then go, knock yourself out. But exactly what are you doing? Hey, let's knock your budget down $400 and find what you can do just as easily with less stuff.
The cool thing, and I didn't have this until when did they come out? 2 years ago, 1 year ago, something like that. I didn't go out and buy it right away. One of the things, and I had like a cheapo soundboard that I had forever, and it worked because I was using XLR mics, and I needed some sort of soundboard to plug them in. But the new USB mics sound amazing. The thing I do like about the Rodecaster, it has the Aphex sound and the big bottom and some of the compression. That's why I sound so good, like Barry White. Yeah.
Well, it's also your mic.
Yeah, it's the mic's nice too, but I mean, this is all. I mean, I've been doing this for 7-8 years, somewhere like this. And I didn't start like this. I mean, I used a C930 Logitech camera forever, and those are still good cameras. I think Grace still uses that. And I mean, it's just, you just slowly add. And then if you're a nerd, you buy things like I do and make your wife mad, but you hide it in your office so she can't see.
We've got a good question from Phil Hill over on Amazon. He wants to know, can you do Clubhouse and Amazon Live at the same time?
Technically you could. It would, you could do it. It would be, I would use it to continue the conversation, or take the conversation and move it to Amazon Live, because they're going to miss out on all the products you have below there.
Right.
But you could start a Clubhouse and say, hey, by the way, here's my link. We're going to go live on Amazon. I'm going to talk about all the things I just said. Or you could do an Amazon Live and go, hey, if anybody had questions about the tech setup that I just talked to you guys all about, we can go on the Clubhouse and here's the link. Honestly, I'm a little more leaning towards like Twitter Spaces, because when you go to Amazon Live from a live show, you immediately almost lose half your audience. Because one, they don't have the invite, or two, it's iOS only. I think that maybe the Android is coming out. But anyway, I want to have as least amount of friction as I can. And most people have Twitter accounts, and they'll just go, and you could do it that way. But yeah, technically with a Roadcaster, you could do both at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, my question back to you, Phil, or to anyone who's thinking about this is why. Okay, so is it just to do it? I think they're completely different platforms, and if there is a reason to do it and you're wanting, and it makes sense to do it, take somebody from somewhere. But neither platform probably loves it if you're taking away from their platform, right? So why not farm that community where you're at? And if going live at the same time makes perfect sense for you for whatever reason, I can't even come up with a case scenario for that, but I'd want to know why someone would want to do that. I know we had Judy Fox on here, Jim, a couple of months ago, and that's what she was asking about doing this and going on Clubhouse. And I was like, well, Clubhouse isn't video. Isn't that part of the charm of it? I guess. I don't know.
And Guy even wanted to go put his podcast episodes on there. I'm like, well, why? We talked through it and stuff. But we went live on Facebook for my show, the episode where I had Luria Petrucci on, and who does live streaming pros. And we did it. We went live inside a Clubhouse kind of as a test. It made sense for me to do it because we're like, hey, we're nerds. We're trying this thing out. And Clubhouse was coming out, and, can it work? That kind of thing. But I don't do that every week. I just did it that one time. If anything, like for the Tailwind show, like we did a big pin review one, and we said, hey, anybody wants to talk about stuff and more, we're going to be over on Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces. We've done both. And we can like talk. And then that's really cool because people come and they're like, I can actually talk to you. I don't have to get on camera. I mean, it is a cool thing to continue that conversation and build that community. So on that aspect, I think it could be really powerful.
And that's where I would agree with you, Jeff. I think that's the power. And that's why right now, like if you want to call it in the battle of the audio apps,
right.
I think Twitter has the lead because, as an example, NFL draft's coming up, right? You can have fun talking about the draft. And guess what? You can DM or tweet whatever football team, hey guys, come talk about your latest draft pick. Maybe they'll jump in, maybe they won't, but you can have that conversation where it's like, am I connected to or follow? And then if you ping them, they might have their notifications off. So I think the whole continuing the conversation, like with your super fans right now, they get to get their voice on that maybe they couldn't do during the live stream. I think, Madeline Scalar is doing that with Twitter Smarter she has the chat, but then she has an actual Twitter Spaces a few hours later. And so people that maybe couldn't catch the chat, they still get the gist of what went on. I think, so I like the idea of separating them. And I thought it was interesting. I think I saw an article today that was talking about, or somebody had posted about, do you think, what's going to happen between Clubhouse and, of course, now Facebook, right, rolling out their own audio app. But I don't know. For me, I think I've been getting away from Facebook. I don't see that as like, oh, now I'm going to go on Facebook because I can have audio chats with people. I don't know.
I tested it today. They have the app that their R&D is doing called Hotlines, and I have access to that. And so I went and tested it with Peg Fitzpatrick today. I really like the interface. You can turn on the camera if you want or not. And so there's some really cool things. But you're right. I mean, I was thinking when you were talking, Jim, let's say how to work that with Amazon Live. I would almost do, like you said, the NFL draft, get on Clubhouse and talk about it, build up buzz, and then go, hey, we're going to be on Amazon Live, and we're going to be talking about all this swag, all these, jerseys about this stuff, and continuing this on there. So it'd be a great way, if you're doing something like that, is to build up like momentum on Clubhouse, and then go, by the way, we're gonna actually show you what these things look like over on Amazon Live, and you can actually purchase them if you'd like, but we're gonna go do some demos right now. So I think it'd be a great way to get people there, and then because everybody can get on Amazon Live, is because it's the same thing. It's the friction isn't there. Like, they just need to go to the Amazon website. And so I think that would be a really cool way to build some buzz, to move them to your Amazon Live show.
I like that. It casts the net wide. It builds communities separately in those platforms. It can kind of port some people around. Not everybody's going to come over. Ricky's chiming in, said he's never had a Facebook account, and so you're going to get people that it's for some people, it's not for others. But I think it's kind of plays to the argument of multi-streaming. It's like, should we be multi-streaming on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube and Amazon and like all at the same time? It's sort of like, well, if it makes sense for you because you want to cast that wider net, or does it make more sense to focus on one channel, on one particular platform, and really build that community? I guess it depends on whatever your brand is.
It used to be really a big deal, because you couldn't interact with people because of the chat features. Like when I went live on Facebook, I couldn't pull in comments from Twitter or somewhere else. Now with some of the technology, it's it's amazing, and you can actually see on their icon, and you can go, hey, Chris from coming in from YouTube, I really appreciate you watching over there. Let me know if you have any questions. Where you can be specific. I really like that. That's why I was like, I can't wait till we can do that on Amazon and pull those people up on screen, because it'd be so cool to do that. And I think it would really, I think they need to get on it, because that would really increase the engagement and length of time people who have been in there.
This is awesome. Yeah, we're gonna have to have you back, Jeff. This has been amazing conversation.
Been fun. Nerding out about all this stuff.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah. Well, we'll do an episode. You can teach us how to use the loop deck.
It's amazing.
Jim wants me to empty my bank account right now, Jeff. That's
just sell one of those guitars behind you. That's all you need to do.
They're props. That's a green screen. Look away.
It's all in Zoom. It's all done in Zoom. Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Man.
Yeah, this has been awesome, Jeff. You've given so much of your time, and this is one of those ones where I get to the end of it, and of course, this being somebody who's doing production kind of behind the scenes. There was so much information, and Phil Hill mentioned as well. He's like, he couldn't write fast enough with all the great stuff that you were given. So this is one of those ones where I got to go back, and I'm going to be team replay on this, because I know there was probably something that I missed because I was hammering out a banner or switching this or switching that. But man, thank you so much for this. This has been awesome, and an honor for us to have you aboard, man.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, so much.
Thanks, man.
It was a lot of fun.
All right, guys. Well, I guess our next one, Jim, is it Monday of next week?
Well, we have Kurt, but we may have a Dealcasters After Dark before the week is up.
Uh-oh. You know what happens on Dealcasters After Dark, Jeff?
I know, but it sounds like a Cinemax show. I told Jim that the other day.
It's starting to turn into that. A little bit. Yeah. No, it's not. No, it's more like FX. Not Cinemax.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like, maybe
they'll let some of those words slide through, but it's I don't know. Slightly edited. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks to everybody that joined us on Amazon and all the other tubes. And as always, don't fear the gear.